Greetings, Greg here for Tesla Fan Insight. Today's talk focuses on Elon V, or Elon Visionary, versus Elon R, which stands for Elon Reality. There are a couple of different Elon Musks that are operating, and we take a look at the perspective that's had by the different Elons. The final part of our talk today focuses on the fact that at the end, the second part of what we covered today is that Elon Musk will die within the next 6 weeks. And title sounds strange, but I think you'll enjoy the explanation of it and how it gives a better light on the company. Greetings, this is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time on our channel, please take time to like and subscribe. If you're a repeat visitor, please hit the like button. And we're also on Patreon and could definitely use your support to improve every aspect of what we're doing. I'm looking at our screen and I'm seeing, I want to see if I can get a little better color image there. Terrific. So we have a kind of a weird title topic today, and this is really driven by the fact that, as you saw, the stock price fell by about 50 points in 2 days. The heaviest fall was 30 points yesterday, which I believe is the 17th of August 2018. And the question is, what is this about? Answer, Elon Musk did a rather emotional, hey David, Donovan, thank you guys. I can see all of you when you say hello. Unfortunately, I can't say hello to everybody because it messes up the flow of the show. So I wanted to point out that I kind of like to go for the second part of our conversation before the first, because it sets the second up really, really well. So what this is about is there's actually a book by a woman named Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and it's called On Death and Dying. And it turns out that if you go back through your life, at any significant point in your life, there's a 5-stage process that we go through when we die. So Ms. Ross was a doctor. She worked at a hospital. And what she did was she watched as people died, and she noted which stage they were in when they died. The first of the 5 stages is denial. The final stage is acceptance. There are other stages in the process, including there's no way I'm going to die. The second stage is bargaining. God, if I do this, will you allow me to live? The third stage is actually a depression, where you realize you're going to die, and you know, it's a depressing moment. And then we go through to an acceptance spot, which opens up sort of a different realm of how one deals with life. And it turns out at every major growth point in our lives, we in essence die to our old selves and then move on to this new self that allows these new possibilities, etc. So I was intrigued by this because if you read the famous New York Times article, it talks about Elon Musk is discussing the fact that this has been a very brutal year for him, and he was a little bit teary-eyed, and you know, he's discussing issues that have been had by Tesla that were very difficult for him, and the fact that Tesla's heading into a very difficult period. So as soon as he went into this, the question popped up, which is why the stocks tanked by 5%, is that there's a background story going on with Tesla right now. And what the background story is that Elon has racked up so much debt on the company that we're in a position right now where if Model 3 sales don't meet target, Tesla may have to go into a bankruptcy restructuring process. And so the difficulty that's happening and why the stock price tanked was that if you figure out the number of vehicles a week. Let's call it 5,500 a week over the next 6 to 8 weeks. Those vehicles produce a certain amount of revenue. They also produce a certain amount of sort of gross profit, and then there's a net profit. Well, what's happening is, in essence, Elon said in his New York Times piece that there's a huge problem going on, which is we can actually meet our targets of production. And when you add up all that revenue and then the profit we get from it, we can't service our debt under the current situation that we're in. And so we're likely to end up having to go into restructuring. So the whole idea of buying the company and other methods is the beginning of a process that he's doing to try to figure out how do we get through the next 6 months to a year without going bankrupt. So why I chose the fact that Elon's going to die in the next 6 weeks is that along the lines of what was discussed by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, the reason why Elon dies is that lurking within the company are what are called sacred cows. So these are things that Elon has decided to do, et cetera, et cetera. For example, the decision not to have external dealerships, the decision to, I just want to break off and say, one of the dumbest decisions I've ever seen by an executive of any type is this whole decision to not have service facilities in strategic locations, but instead having service people drive to everybody's house or office to fix a car. That's got to be one of the best ideas for super rich, but a horrible idea for a company that has to deal with a lot of customers. Because as I said when I did that initial show, I pointed out that, wait a second, it's a great idea to go fix that car at your house, but the problem is during the commute time from the service facility to your house, that mechanic isn't earning anything. And when they get to your house to do the fix, that's what you're paying for. You don't pay for the time that they're moving around. So this is a Tesla innovation that isn't done by other folks because it would be too costly to both pay for the employee time and mark that time up so it becomes a profit center for the company. So this is one of, I could name countless sacred cows. Another one I was thinking about that's amazing is I love it when at least once every 2 or 3 shows somebody puts up a notice on there and says, hey, but look at the bright side. Elon doesn't advertise and he has all this business. Hey, that is smart, but think through what you just said. Elon has advertising in the form of he gives referral bonuses to people who own the vehicle and refer other customers. That's advertising. One of the most expensive forms of advertising that Elon is doing is he has a setup where, think about all those expensive locations in malls throughout the world that he's using to advertise Tesla. Well, guess what? Those spaces are 3 or 4 times the cost of the same space was in a warehouse industrial area. So what you think is no advertising in the form of television and ads on a wall is actually being expended in what I consider to be foolhardy ways to have all these very expensive in-mall locations that suck a lot of cash regardless of how many sales they produce. So let's get back to our core discussion. Why I believe Elon Musk dies in the next 6 to 8 weeks is that he's built the company up. He's made decisions with his management team about what they're going to do. The problem that he's having right now is he knows the changes he has to make in order to make the company profitable, but those changes are going to require him to die to his old self and accept a new reality. And the problem right now, if you reread the New York Times article, is there's a reality of how Tesla gets to profitability that means that he's going to have to completely rethink what he's doing in order to help the company get to that spot. And it's my review that he's reluctant to do that because he's has a marriage, or he's fallen in love with those ideas that are being implemented on the street, that he wants to do. I'm belaboring the point, but I just love attacking, once I have a space that I can talk with stuff about. Clearly, one of the dumbest decisions that Tesla has made is that there is a need immediately to build what I call, in Los Angeles and a couple of other places, premium experience zones for your high-end customers. So what Tesla is saying is, if you spend $150,000 on the super duper P100 and then you add the performance to it, I want you to go into the same facility that somebody has spent $35,000 for their car into. Well, guess what? As we've talked about before, in an airplane, the first class seats represent 5% of the seats in the plane, but they represent 35% of the profit. So what this means is that one road to profitability for Tesla that Elon has kind of gotten into is the fact that, hey, if I produce the performance version of dual motors or the extended range, there's enough profit there for the company to stay alive. If I try to sell you a $35,000 car, the company goes out of business because we don't make enough on those cars to get beyond break even. So the bottom line is, Tesla desperately needs you have to pay an X amount a month, or you pay $100 a month as a subscription fee, and you now get a package of services, including, for example, tune-ups and tune-ups in the form of tire rotations and other inspections at your home or office that other people don't get. And the profit from that can be used to, on a monthly basis, move over and service everybody better, but the company doesn't go out of business. So, so at any rate, if you reread the article, which I think it's an important one, basically Elon is saying that he's in a tough spot right now, which is the company is still in jeopardy, could theoretically go into bankruptcy, even if they meet many of the production goals that they have in mind. So the stock fell because there are a bunch of folks that thought they were out of the woods, and Elon is in essence saying, we're heading into a heavy period because I'm going to have to cut off sacred cows that I have set up. And, as a result, the company changes in a way I don't like. Another one that comes to mind is that he insists on offering free supercharging to Model X and S owners, and to now the performance version of the Model 3. Another good idea, but the issue is that if everybody is paying for their supercharger facilities, he can now put superchargers in locations and a lot more places that are useful for customers. There are a lot of condo dwellers in major cities that are ready to buy Teslas, but their buildings don't have fast charging, and they don't want to pay huge amounts in a parking lot to go get their car charged up. So as a result, you're hurting your sales in high density areas with fairly wealthy consumers involved. So I'm sort of bringing all this up because there's an issue. There's a huge issue here, which is through the back door. One of the most brutal parts of business school or learning how to do business is something called cost accounting. And the reason cost accounting is painful is that you think in your mind you know what's going on with your costs, but then you start going through the incremental costs that you're dealing with, and all of a sudden you realize, wait a second, I thought we were doing great. So Elon is thinking, wait a second, giving away free electricity, great idea. It's good marketing. It bonds our customers to us. All these other things. In the future, we can produce electricity and put it through the system so we can exchange electricity with the grid in lieu of all these people that are getting free electricity. There are these possibilities that lurk. The challenge right now is that there's a bunch of loss leaders sitting under, like barnacles, as Elon Musk said, sitting under the company. And even though we have a nice revenue line going and people love the cars, etc., he's avoiding the reality of all these losses and how those losses affect the entire company. So, long-winded statement to say, stock price is down. Elon Musk is going to have to come up with changes that he wants to do going forward that'll give the company a chance to succeed. Now, one last sort of lurking area that I wanted to come up and look at with Elon is the fact that there's something that he made a comment. So Elon just tweeted about taking the company private, right? And what he indicated was he was driving to the airport and decided to tweet about the efforts they were making to take the company private. What I thought was fascinating about this, if you read the line in there, he actually says, I was thinking about taking the company private. He didn't say we, meaning when you're the CEO of a public company, you have a board, and the board protects the interests of shareholders. So there's a necessity for Elon to get into the we plan, which means we have we discussions before we do tweets that are impactful on the stock of the company and potentially create huge issues. Elon isn't interested in that because this is all about Elon, not about the needs of the company. And to a large extent, this has worked. The company exists. He's put a lot of money and time and sweat into it. And so I think it's awesome. The key to it is as long as he rides the I train instead of the we train, we continue to see stuff popping up. One of the other things that I've noticed is that I grew up in a family where my mom had some mental health issues. And I was fascinated because just before he did that tweet, I was starting to get nervous about what was next. And the reason is that, as I shared with you, and I learned this from my mom, was that there are certain people that are so good in a crisis or crazy situation that if there's no crisis or crazy, they create it. So now they have something to put their time and energy into. And so Elon has been able to sort of weather the storms that have come through, if they've died down and things have moved along. But it just feels to me like he needs to create a new chaos zone into which he can pour his utmost energy to do a great job. Because if you leave it to everything running smoothly, his feeling is that I need to introduce something that creates chaos that I need to fix. So you guys will soon be able to join the Understanding Elon Musk train a little bit, because mundane things like in Norway, there's a shortage of repair parts, so therefore the cars are getting fixed. Not a big enough problem for him to get excited about. He needs a big enough problem that's difficult to solve, that other people can't do, that, you know, takes a lot of energy. And so, you know, if that problem doesn't exist, he needs to create it. It could be with a tweet, it could be, you know, with an interview where he bears his soul and ends up tanking the stock in the process. But, you know, Elon is in an interesting mode, and I hope the company is able to weather some of the storms that he's dropping in because of this phenomenon. So I also wanted to note that you guys will notice that if you go back through our shows, we do a lot of discussions that are focused on good operating fundamentals and how those work, and how Tesla's not doing that, and how that could affect your ownership and your vehicle. So it's a really good idea, if you own the stock or own the car, to understand globally what's going on. The final thing I wanted to note today is I went to a supercharger facility near my home, and I had I interviewed sort of 3 owners about their current experiences, a Model X owner, S, and a 3. Everybody's been really happy with their car, and I was impressed that the X and S owners had had their vehicles for quite a while without any door handle issues, which I thought was really cool. The one thing that popped up that I want all of you to know about is that the X model owner was pointing out that he was missing part of the covering for the wheel that goes above the wheel, but on the car, on the front left of the car. And I asked him what happened. He said, oh, that's the only problem I've had. I was in autopilot mode, and we went into a construction zone, and I ended up scraping one of those barrels, and it ripped off a small part of the car, but we were lucky because it's only a $50 repair. And so I was like, wow, that's really interesting. And this brings up another point about when you're in autopilot mode, please take care to make sure that if you go into construction zones where there are things along the side of the road, etc., and you're in autopilot mode, your potential for an accident, etc., is huge. Fire trucks, cones, objects that are fixed, that are sitting next to the road, are very likely things your vehicle will run into, simply because that's one thing that's not handled well by autopilot. And so one might, take in mind to have due caution in those driving environments. I see we've sort of reached towards the end of our time for today. We had promised that we were going to do a Sunday show. I may use your guys' comments and guidance on whether or not we do that this week. But I do think Tesla's back into jeopardy zone. I do think they're going to have to be some great. I do think that, there's a challenge going on with, is this sucker going to go bankrupt? And that whole discussion has now jumped back into the process with a $300 stock price. Can he get out of it? Hey, I think if they're doing 6,000 to 8,000 vehicles a week, $1 billion a month can get you enough revenue to get things moving. I'm wondering if the whole idea of dealerships won't be introduced, or some other vehicle that allows Tesla to pull in large amounts of cash without having to go to the capital markets, because there are covenants that restrict how much more debt Tesla can take on, so they can't keep losing large amounts of money without the company going bankrupt. At any rate, really appreciate you guys chatting or taking time out today. As I finish this, I'm going to do my 20 leg lifts on each side as a way to strengthen quad muscles, as we've discussed, and make sure that there aren't any health issues that come from issues in that regard. I also took the vitamins this morning, making sure we don't eat within 2 hours of going to bed, so that you don't get acid indigestion combined with potential cancer. And take a look at the 5-2 diet if it's of interest to you, or the paleo. Those are recommended. 30 SPF to avoid sun damage. Again, I want to thank all of you for taking time out. Donovan, thanks for the multiple commentaries there. Look forward to, after you guys leaving notes there. Wanted to say au revoir, French, tschüss macht's gut, German, Lahitrot, Hebrew, Hoda Hafez, Farsi, Farvel, Dutch. Hey Donovan, I need some Swedish lessons. And in Jamaica we say, enough respect, walk good man. And one thought last for the day is, a pretty face and bad character, them kind of living count whole chapter. And we'll cover that if you want a translation of the patwa from myself or my friends from Jamaica who are on here as well. Have a great day. Bye for now, and look forward to any and all comments.